So, Eve, today we're talking about the state of, we're kind of doing another state of the UX industry and in our kind of our murder mystery. And one of the big things you and I have been talking about, and one of the things that we've been seeing that's a recurring theme, is the lack of design process, the lack of design leadership, the lack of product processes. We're seeing this, and we're seeing kind of the effects of this as we're starting to see the AI bubble bursting, as we're seeing recruiters and other companies struggle with hiring, with keeping people on. Yeah, so that's kind of like where we start off this episode.
Yeah, I think also to add to that is just the Swiss cheese of AI that just needs to be, we have to poke the holes in, especially with, like, I think a lot of expectations that people have had of, like, it just being a natural language model, and just kind of almost knowing our thoughts, or doing things that obviously are, we're just seeing that that's not the case, right? We had very high expectations, and the bubble is bursting, kind of like a 2001 .com bust.
One of the big issues that we're seeing with a lot of these language models is we're seeing that they're starting to replicate each other, and we're seeing that they're starting to it seems as though they're all kind of starting to merge into one type of thing, and and the slop that they're creating, they're now ingesting. So it is now becoming a recursive issue that's like degrading the models, and also making people less efficient in their jobs and less efficient in what they're doing. I keep thinking about this, and I keep thinking about how this march towards that, and a lot of the problems that we're seeing have a lot to do with come down to leadership, and come down to conformity, and come down to a lot of these all of these companies and all of these apps and big tech companies and all these other types of companies that are just continually looking at each other for influence and for inspiration and for thinking, instead of trying to innovate.
Yeah. I'm and that's just with software development. That's like a typical that you see, right, with efficiencies when it comes to coding, or just like how we think very linear about like the software development process. And I think one thing, especially when we like kind of go through just how I think the expectations of AI and what it's delivering, obviously people are head over heels, because you're looking at, rates of people going to it for almost like a therapist, legal advice,
Yep.
medical advice, right? So it's a doctor, a lawyer, a counselor. And so with that, how do we almost like make sure that is this advice that you're getting, is this safe, is this wise, right?
Yeah.
And so here's a story that I have, and it might not necessarily be related directly to AI, but I believe this is true. So my parents are Catholic, and I think my mom was like at a Bible study or something like that, and the Bible study, they're older, like, I don't know, I don't think they really took their spirituality necessarily really that seriously, us growing up, but as they've gotten older, they have. And one thing that I noticed, that is weird, and maybe this is social media, but I think it is AI, is this advice that you're getting, especially when it comes to kind of like pop psychology or something. And so my mom, over the weekend, oh, I hope my parents don't mind me sharing this story. I just realized that. They'll be fine. My mom over the weekend came to my dad and she's like, oh, like the priest was talking about narcissism. Okay. And I've heard other people talk about narcissism, right? It's almost like this trendy thing that you're, hearing about, like, oh, wow, this like, new thing. Now, my sister Nora, she's a clinical psychologist, and we're talking about like 12 years ago. Never did she once, label our family or analyze us, right? Respect. I actually respect her for that. So as my parents are like finding out this kind of new information from AI and how they're interweaving these things in our daily lives, going to Bible study, just talking to your friends or whatever. It's like, wait a minute, hold on. The experts, like I would say my sister is now, would never label you, let's say, a narcissist. So let's stick with this example.
Okay.
But people like my mom, my dad, you're a narcissist. You're a narcissist. I'm like, everyone's a freaking narcissist. Like, did Nora, my sister, ever talk about us being narcissists? She's been doing this for like over a decade, maybe even a decade and a half now. So hold on, let's like kind of take a step back and say, are we being wise here? Or are we just jumping to conclusions because all of a sudden we just have this new thought? This is where I feel like there's something to be said about some guardrails when it comes to, just like the delivery mechanism of like, oh, I feel so much wiser, but you're not an expert. So like how this knowledge is starting to come together, coding, design, obviously, like therapy, medical advice, legal advice. I don't know. What do you think about how I'm like connecting these things?
I think what you're getting at is really interesting because I think that's part of the slop issue, which is that an average person does the AI know the difference between a clinical psychologist and some jackass on the internet? I don't know. Like, without getting too specific, there's a lot of TV doctors, right? We know the doctor first name, right? Think doctor first name, doctor weird name, whatever, right? All these TV doctors that get TV shows that espouse their expertise. And then, like, if you look into them, most of the times, what they are doctors in has jack all to do with like what they actually are preaching, right?
Right on. I mean, so to me, that's where even social media, you're seeing a lot of people, young, middle age, whatever. I'm like,
Yeah.
where's this like knowledge coming from? Like it, obviously they're trying to attach it to personal experience, but I also feel like some of this is just is it drummed up? Right? Like where is it coming from? Like, how do you know?
Yeah.
Where's your expertise? Where's the years of experience? This is key to, I think, what is like, are we actually getting smarter because of AI?
I mean, it doesn't seem so. It seems like a lot of the evidence is saying like it's adding cognitive load to workers. And I was and like I said, like because it's consuming information, I don't know how much context it has around who doctors or judges, because thinking about just like TV personalities, there are legitimate doctors on television and there are pretend doctors on television. There are legitimate legal experts on television and there are nonsense legal experts. And how it sifts through what's legitimate and what's not even thinking about like, we know that there was misinformation around the vaccines and such. So like figuring out how, like how it like is figuring out and dissecting that information. I did work for a big drug company, and that was an issue that we were talking about. Is
Yeah.
like how does it figure out, how do the LLMs, how do they figure out what's accurate or not? How do they not give out incredibly dangerous information? Because there was an instance recently where there was a young man who asked about how to commit suicide,
Adam.
and yeah, and
Yeah.
the AI told him what to do, kind of cheered him on along with it. Now they did mention that there were several times where they were trying to like redirect him a few times, but again, uh, stepping aside from AI for a moment, because I feel like we've talked about that quite a bit. I'm I'm more concerned now with the leadership, the C-suite leadership, and the design leadership, and all the leadership that is, or lack thereof, that is conforming and is leading us down into these black holes. I keep thinking about, I was thinking, we know a lot of these C-suite execs who all look in the mirror and think of themselves as like Steve Jobs, or that they want to be Steve Jobs.
Mm.
And I was thinking, man, uh, like, what would he be? How would he be thinking today in 2025 with these LLMs? And I also kept thinking about the fact that a lot of these leaders, when they think about Steve Jobs, they try to echo the worst traits, which is like the idea that you have this idea and that you just try to bully and drill everybody into this idea, versus the best traits, which was the nonconformity and the thinking about like, what problem are you solving? How are we being hyper focused on the user and the human beings? Um, that kind of like that kind of element of jobs that we should think about, and that we should be like, oh, that's right, that was really like nonconformist to think about, like, okay, there are these MP3 players. How can we take an MP3 player and make it like a usable, functional
Yeah.
product? How can we, now that it's been adopted, how can we take an MP3 player and like make it into a small computer that can be put into people's pockets, and they can make phone, they can do all kinds of things for people, right? Like, can solve all kinds of problems. And instead it's just become, instead of it has it we're now in the world of like, where, it's just slop everywhere.
I have a story I want to share too, of the conversation I just had with
Yeah.
someone this morning. But yeah, I think to echo Steve Jobs a little bit, I would say he was more of an inventor,
Right.
right? And so there is there's no shortcuts in an invention. It's,
Yeah.
just like 1,000 tries before you actually get, the light bulb, right? So there's some things that we have to kind of think through, that, the inventor, like being an inventor, is somebody that, fails so many times and learns from the failure, right? And the reaction to the failure is very important. And I think AI may not be giving us a chance to have an opportunity to fail, because it's always like providing an answer. It's
Mhm.
always saying something. It's like, no, I don't need anything else. Like, hey, do you want me to make a poster of this? Do you want me to sum this up in into a social media post? Do you want me to condense this or expand on it? It's like,
Yeah.
give me a second to breathe. I have to kind of think about what I just read. And so I think there's some of that. So I was talking to an individual that is using AI. He's a data analyst. Is currently teaching here in Nashville. And we were talking about just like the tech stack and, like how, what he's doing. And most of his company that, like his consulting and the people that work with him were like just 20-year-olds. And so he, kind of taught them, a few things. And lo and behold, they did a couple great things, and these kids went and got jobs, of course, just like we all did, because we're all like really damn good and young and cheap. Right. And so, one of the things is like, he's like, well, I can't like reproduce that anymore. So people coming back and saying, hey, can you fix this? Can you update this? Can you maintain this? Well, he didn't have the workforce is gone, and he doesn't necessarily have the time to like teach like a new batch of students. And I think, just to connect to that is, where I think AI, just like how it's going to be a part of like the workflow and how it's being built out. I think that that's like important. Like are we almost like using AI as a crutch for our education, like how we educate ourselves, or the lack of education? Or are we using AI to kind of be the, like, let's say the inventor in your example, like the job, Steve Jobs? I don't know. That was just something as you were talking kind of like echoed what we were talking about, and how, like, where is the future of the workforce?
Well, and it's worrying to like catch up on you and I before we got on the podcast. I texted you earlier in this week about how the whole Cracker Barrel design argument is now they've done research, and they've shown it's bots. There were a bunch of bots. So like now we have AI arguing about design decisions and probably leading real human beings into nonsense arguments as well, and spending God only knows how much uh, um, of our time on that. And then that also leads into another thing that I sent you, which is this idea of the dead internet, which is that the internet is now overpopulated with bots, and that I forget what the percentage was exactly, but it's a pretty high percent of people that are on any of the social platforms where they're saying these are not real people. These are in fact bots.
Yeah.
That are in comments. Like on our YouTube, there are going to be comments that are going to be from bots on and on any social post. A lot of those comments are from bots.
Yeah.
Which is, like, I don't know what do we do with that? And that,
Yeah, I know. Because, you see these bots, and what they're saying is like, oh, I made, 63,000 my first week of da da da. And you're like, what is this? Right. And then you're just seeing, oh, I know that. And then they're like tagging the same person. I know who that person is too. They helped me with, whatever, financial advice or something. And it's everywhere. It's like on, medical, like maybe it's like, videos that help you kind of work out, or medical advice or anything like that. And so you're just seeing the internet is just full of this kind of sloppiness. And really all it is, these bots are just trying to get you to, hopefully, like, I think at the end, I mean, I've never really clicked through, but to give you money, right? Or get them to, get you to give them money.
yeah, I think, well, I think there's two things. I think that there are, if we're lucky, that's the scenario. Which by lucky I mean they're a bot that has been designed by somebody for perhaps advertisement purposes. That's a good scenario, perhaps in quotes. I'm saying this. The other side is like scams, scams where they're gonna try to fish you, or they're going to try fish, meaning for folks that don't know, these are people, these are schemes where they're trying to get your personal information or collect your data, and they're going to pretend like they're from a legitimate company, and and that's a bad case scenario. But an even worse case scenario, and Cracker Barrel's an example. There's also examples in elections, which is where some of the bots are deployed to sow social disorder, and usually from Russia and from some foreign adversaries, where they deploy them and they purposefully look at where we have vulnerabilities in the U.S. that they're trying to exploit. And Cracker Barrel is like an example of like a culture war where bots were deployed. It was able to spin up a mini little culture war where people were screaming about it on Fox News and CNN for like a week, and then it goes away. And so it's very, but then there's no follow up. There's no follow up about, hey, this was all bots. Hey, this was all bullshit.
Yeah.
Like we're not going to see that. We're not going to see that part reported.
Well, I think it's because we're still trying to wrap our hands around, like what is this? Like who are we interacting, or what are we interacting with? Because I think it was the same thing as Twitter was bought out, and then like skimmed down, and it's like, wait, how is this conglomerate being run? What are these accounts? I mean, I think my account got shut down too. Like, I was like, that's not fair. I had that account since like 2008 or something. And so it was just like, it was almost like at least for me, for the first time, it was like a revelation that there's a lot of, I mean, we thought there was like fake things going on, right? Like fake people on dating sites. But at the same time, you just thought there were trolls or real people. But then come to find out, no, these are just like automated accounts, liking your stuff, or I don't know, like, just doing things. And you're like, what is this for? But I don't even know. And so to me, it feels like we're still trying to wrap our hands around what is actually going on here.
Do you know, pulling this back a little bit to UX, I was thinking about how, where is the UX leadership calling for moderation? Because we've talked about several different products at this point where we've been like, these products are like in trouble, or they're dead, or they're not dead, but they're like floundering, or there's an issue. Talking about LinkedIn or Roblox, or what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
A lot of these AI bots that are like starting to run rampant on everything. And like back in the day, before social media, there were message boards. And on message boards, at very least, even if you had people that were overzealous, you at least had human beings that were trying to moderate the message boards and kicking people off if they behaved badly, and trying to like kind of control some of that. And now we don't have, now we're back to like the wild, wild west, and we're back to no guardrails, no nothing. And it's so interesting because I was watching this journalist who was talking about Section 230, and that there's a big debate about Section 230, which is like this, which basically is controversial because it has to do with like basically if you your liability on the internet if you put up something, like the ability for people to be sued, and there's a whole lot more that I'm not going to be able to pull out of my brain about Section 230. But we do need something. And I do think, and I don't think it's, and I think that where I'm pulling it back to UX is like, I would think that a lot of UX leadership at all of these companies should be pushing and advocating for moderation to keep their platforms safe for their users, to keep even their platforms safe for themselves and for their companies.
Mm.
I could see where like shareholders or leadership might think, oh, well, you know what, if we spend a lot of money on moderation and on having actual human beings do all this, like we can't scale it, or it's going to be an exorbitant amount of money and blah, blah, blah. But like we are seeing in real time, like damaging effects of all of this, and like we have to at some point have start to pull back and start to like start correcting this before it gets way out of hand.
Well, yeah, I think, what you're touching on is like actually a really important issue that we may have talked about, which is, how we had the opportunity of growing up without being recorded
Yeah.
all the time. And so, with with that, there was the opportunity of, just I guess like the ability of transformation of,
Hmm.
from assholery to maybe saint or something, right? Like
Totally.
giving ourselves the chance to calibrate and just like move forward. Whereas now I think, and I've seen this and it kind of irks me a little bit with like, you need to apologize, then they apologize, and it's like, oh, you just apologized because you got caught. It's like, all right, you guys, I don't like the way this, it's like we're getting either over, what is it called? Like, we're just taking it to a point of the morality, overextending it to like, oh, you're fake, you're real, well, how do you know? Like we are humans and if we are living an appropriate life, we're going to backtrack, get better, get worse, learn our lesson, stop being an asshole, be an asshole, right? Like we're going to evolve. And I feel like what we're doing feels very Black Mirror episode of, the situation where we're just throwing out another mask on top of a mask. We already have enough masks in real life
Yeah.
that we are trying to get over through therapy.
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh, well, now my recorded history of all time
Yeah.
is, in some, like anyone could, search me up and find something. I don't know, Brian. That
Yeah.
doesn't feel right.
There are people that make mistakes, right? And then
All of us, no, we all make
we
mistakes.
all
Like
make
we
mistakes.
all are messing up, screwing up royally all the time. Like
Totally.
we can't like hide that. That's just, we're not gonna, with the perfection, it doesn't exist
It
in
doesn't
human
exist.
nature.
No, but I do think, let me delineate it a little bit. There's us making mistakes, right? And then there's malicious actors. That's I guess where I would kind of a little bit of the line. And us making mistakes growing up, being messy, growing out of that, that's one thing. Versus then there's malicious actors, which is like um, some people that are purposefully and sometimes these are kids, but sometimes these are adults, or sometimes these are people that are purposefully um, committing crimes or doing et cetera, et cetera. And I think part of the problem is that when we rely on automated systems, uh, automated systems do not have the context to understand the difference between those two things. When we were talking about Roblox, we are talking about like when kids are young, they test limits, and they do the thing where they try to like push and test the boundaries and like figure out
Oh,
what's right or wrong,
my
right?
kids, my kids have done that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I had to correct them as a solid parent should do. Like, hey, your behavior is inappropriate,
yeah.
and we need to discuss this ad nauseum.
I remember when I was young and I was teaching art when I was younger, and there was a kid in an art class who started drawing a inappropriate symbol for from World War II.
Yes.
And when I asked them about it, they said, "Well, I just saw this symbol in this movie, and that was it." And like,
Right.
and so, I think that sometimes you have to just kind of like gain context and understand
Totally.
what the mistake is or where the error is. And that's where, again, we go to like, it cannot be automated systems cannot solve this problem. And C suites and UX leadership really, really need to be starting to start to voice for getting human beings into these processes. Perhaps it's like just putting a human being in the middle of some of these checkings for the moderation, if they have moderation in place at all. The other thing, the other thing I was thinking about um, is that stepping away from the moderation conversation for a second, is that we're really lacking. We're UX is still UX as a discipline. I was thinking about how we are not we have done such a poor job as a discipline of explaining what user experience is, what user experience design is, what human
Sure.
centered design is, to within ourselves, like all having like a standardization within ourselves and within our disciplines as to what that is, explaining what our processes are, to within ourselves and within our own disciplines, and like, and explaining it to the broader public. Like, one thing, this is really weird and shitty, but one thing that I thought was really interesting was like, if you search UX design or UX user experience design or user experience, and you just try to find uh, logos or T-shirts that would explain what UX is, there are very few out there, and the few that are out there are awful. And I was just like, man, why is that so bad? Why has nobody put that together or figured that out?
I think that's actually a really good point because, what you're saying is, some people, I think that you and I both know, specifically on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
that are, doing the good fight of like separating UX/UI, nonsense.
Uh-huh.
And anytime I see it, I'm like, good for you, like thumbs up, right? And, and just creating that awareness. But I honestly, when we were talking about this episode, um, just the awareness of how, you know, in our infancy,
Hmm.
the industry is
Yeah.
compared to, other, industries or, just areas of, just influence. And yeah, we need to be the ones to create the libraries, the definitions, the corrections. We need more of that. We need leadership that is, confident, um, communicates well, right?
Hmm.
It's like we're preaching to the choir. We do this well for businesses. We need to do this well for, our just the understanding of our own community and what we do, so that other people can understand it. I think, um, coming to cities that may not necessarily be, let's say, product focused, like
Hmm.
me being in Nashville, a service focused city. It's new. It's a new way of talking. There's more education um, more almost like what I felt like I was doing in certain, I thought, in certain companies I was, they're so behind in our language and how we talk about things. And so we built out um, UX libraries for here's the definition of an empathy map.
Mhm.
Here's what an empathy map looks like. Here's when to use an empathy map so that when our product managers and other people on staff want to interact with us, they have like a place to like learn a little bit about what we're talking about. And I do feel like that, what do we call it? That collective, or we had, something we need to bring together, a guild
Yeah.
together that can really, just start to hack away a little bit on the noise and really emphasize what does user experience do for digital platforms? How does it interact, or more so, how does it you know just make money for businesses in a way that's constructive? um when do we like get not lean into some of the dark UX patterns
Mhm.
that are being emphasized in today's culture? Like, why are we staying on our phones for 11 plus hours a day? What is this? Like that, these are those dark patterns that comes from us. We allowed that. And there should be some of that from like a guild, some of the do's and don'ts of
Yeah.
like where we help culture and society so that we don't get burnt out. I mean, you're seeing these Gen Z. I love Gen Z. I just got to say that. I love what you guys are like, how you think, how you feel, how you express yourselves. One thing about Gen Z I love, they're like off social media. I don't have social media. So how do people get in contact with you? No TikTok, no Instagram. They don't even care about Facebook. It's awesome. And it's just like, okay, that's just like a new phenomenon. Or people just completely just getting off the dating apps. I'm not on them. I haven't been on them in 2 years, right? And you just see people really leaning in towards like, just combat it, like being, like pushing away this social norm that we think we should all be like.
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw, I forget who said it, but they said that basically social media is a failed experiment because there was a study that said that human beings could only maintain, and their brains could only maintain about 120 connections with other human beings. And then
Sure.
when it's more than that, it like busts their brains. Which I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Um, the Mike Montero, who's a designer and an author who wrote this book, Ruined by Design, and wrote Design as a Job, he has been advocating, and I kind of believe it, that um, designers and UX professionals should be licensed. And one of the reasons he says that they should be licensed is so that licenses could be revoked. Because his point is like, if you're a doctor or you're a lawyer and you do some, and that's, you're acting as a professional and you do something that is immoral or reprehensible, you get your license pulled. And I think that's true. I think that, what's his face who wrote that, the guy that wrote a book called Hooked, which was about creating addictive programs. And then he wrote a follow-up book trying to tell people not to make addictive programs. And I was just like, come on, dude. Like, so like you knew
Talk
like,
about like a human experience that you're having like in real
yeah,
time.
like you knew, like, and talked about not allowing his kids to get on social media and all that. But
Yeah.
like they know exactly what they're doing. Some of these folks know exactly what they're doing. They're using psychology. They're using the, a lot of the stuff to like get people onto these apps and onto these products. And like, if they cause damage, yeah, their licenses should get pulled, and they shouldn't be allowed to continue to practice.
Yeah, right. Well, and I feel like there's a lot more we can talk through, but I think we should probably kind of cap it here. I think there's definitely other almost tentacles of where this conversation can go, but I think there's yeah, just the awareness at least of guardrails and a collective or a guild, especially when it comes to our industry, like the user experience industry. I think it's up and coming. I think there's lots more people like us, Brian, who are having these conversations. And if you guys feel passionately, please share. We want to know what is, what's happening in other groups, across the country, across the globe, and what kind of conversations are you guys talking about as well?
And you can email us, and in the links below our YouTube video here, we'll have a contact form, so you can email us and or comment, and you can send us anonymous tips about your company or product, and talk to us about it. One thing, Eve, as we wrap up, what if you were in charge of UX, and you had to like start to like figure out how um make things work a little bit better for your designers, what would you start with?
Make things work better for the designers. I mean, with the design teams I've led, I think it was helping them with process.
Yeah.
And the first things first, never work in high fidelity. That was something I saw everywhere. It was just so much easier to drag and drop library components into a design, but there was no thoughtful, user experience that, why are we using a drop down here versus, an unordered list or check boxes? So there was like lots of those conversations we started to have, and an appreciation for going from low fidelity first to high fidelity, and having conversations in low fidelity with stakeholders. So I'd start there, at least if we're kind of talking about just the design process. Like, subscribe, and follow, or become our next victim of bad UX.
UX Murder Mystery is a joint production of Eve, User Experience Design Agency, and CrowleyUX, where systems meet stories. It's hosted by Brian J. Crowley and Eve Eden. Edited by Kelsey Smith. Intro animation and logo design by Brian J. Crowley. The music is by Nicolas Lee. You can follow us at UX Murder Mystery. You can email us at questions@uxmurdermystery.com. UX Murder Mystery is a copyright 2025, Brian J. Crowley and Eve Eden. Thanks for listening.